The information found in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hi, and welcome to the Women in Depth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lourdes Viado. Join me as we explore the inner lives of women, their struggles, fears, hopes, and dreams. We'll go beneath the surface and take a deeper look at what is hidden, unknown, uncertain, and uncomfortable. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm very excited today to welcome a colleague here in Las Vegas, Joann Carter, who is a licensed clinical social worker serving the Las Vegas and Henderson communities. And the area that Joann's going to be sharing her expertise on with us has to do with food allergies. And I don't know about most parents, but for me, this is an area that I really don't have a lot of information. I know that there are peanut allergies, and I think that that's about what probably a lot of parents who aren't really dealing with this directly might be aware of. And so I thought it would be really helpful to have Joann on the podcast today to share some of the information that she has come across in her work, because I have a sense that a lot of times these allergies show up in ways that we don't realize that what we're dealing with are allergies. And so this is a topic I know that'll resonate with a lot of moms out there and could be really helpful as we move forward in parenting and creating the healthiest environment we can for our little ones. So let me tell you a little bit about Joann, and we'll jump right into it. Joann has over 15 years of experience in the mental health realm. Her background in social work has allowed her to view the person in the whole system of their lives and assist individuals in dealing with mental health struggles, as well as attaining emotional wellness. When Joann's two sons were diagnosed with severe food allergies 4 years ago, she found herself needing to find ways to not only help her family, but others. Consulting with colleagues and other medical professionals, she utilized her skills and their knowledge to help families manage their anxiety related to managing their food allergies. Joann is the only therapist in Nevada on the Food Allergy Counselor Directory and is also a member of the Food Allergy Behavioral Health Association. Hi, Joann, and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here and being patient with our process to get to this exact moment. I am glad that we're finally getting to talk about this, because I don't think that there's a lot of information about food allergies and mental health, food allergies and how it affects parents and anxiety. And so this is just something that I think there needs to be more conversation about.
Yes, I totally agree. And another benefit of talking about it, and even if your child doesn't have a food allergy, it's an opportunity for your child to build empathy for those around them that may have a food allergy. So first off, food allergy is a medical condition in which exposure to a certain food triggers a harmful immune response, which is an allergic reaction. Your immune system attacks that protein that just entered your body. So it's scary because eating food is something we all do all the time. Sometimes too much, sometimes not enough. So it causes a lot of anxiety in people because it's a complete change in lifestyle once you're managing a food allergy for yourself, or you're managing it for someone else, or even if it's someone in your extended family, because it changes holidays, it changes school, a lot of changes in life. And we all know, especially in the mental health profession, that change can provoke anxiety at times.
Yeah, and I can imagine that this would be very overwhelming because it's so big. If this is something that, your child or a family member is dealing with, like you said, it's a whole lifestyle change. And I think a lot of times with change and the overwhelm, that can just really be too much for many people.
Yes, definitely. And as far as mental health goes, we don't have a lot of people aware and probably educated enough on what it entails to manage a food allergy. And I think you kind of have to know what it entails to know the level of anxiety that will occur when you have to start to make those changes. Also, just in general, restaurants, the FDA, they don't require that you label for possible contamination. So going out to eat buying your regular cereal, that all changes because it still could have peanuts or any of the top 8 food allergens, which are milk, egg, peanut, tree nuts, wheat, soy, fish, and crustacean shellfish, and sesame is in the process of being added too. So that's a lot of food.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So Joann, can you just start with sharing your own personal experience and what it was like for you? Because I really think that that's important because you've lived this. You're living it.
Yes, and I have been for my middle son's going to be 4 at the end of this month, and we realized he had a milk allergy about 3 weeks in, so it was very early, and we had to switch to a different type of formula. But what it's changed is our lifestyle, like I mentioned in the beginning. When you have 2 parents being on the same page, knowing what to do, the right doctors, it's a whole treatment plan, right? One of, I think, the most important things to help with anxiety and food allergies is just being aware and gathering as much education, not in a compulsive way, but gathering as much education from the Food Allergy Research and Education nonprofit. It's a very good resource for parents or for anyone suffering with food allergies. I've heard and research has shown that some adults are starting to realize they have food allergies, and that's really scary because it happens in a setting all of a sudden, So through my research, because of my children, I've had to look at all of this. I've had to use epinephrine on one of my children while on vacation in a completely different state.
Oh, my goodness.
So I think the most important thing is to reduce the anxiety that caregivers and the person experiencing the food allergy has, because they might be too anxious to give the epinephrine if needed. They might be too anxious to be aware and prepare themselves for what their lifestyle changes are going to look like. And that's why the topic's so important to me, because I myself had anxieties about it. And luckily, I joined some support groups online. I joined some more medically driven ones, and I also joined some that just had parents that just needed support from other parents.
Well, that's good to know that there is support out there and that there are resources for parents who are grappling with this. How prevalent is this?
So about 1 in 13 children, so that's about 2 in every classroom in Nevada, maybe even 3, will have some type of food allergy. It's hard to say which food allergies are the most prevalent. Everybody always associates food allergies with peanuts, but we're seeing milk and egg are usually more prevalent, and that's even harder to prepare for because egg is in a lot of things and so is milk. But, a lot of kids, 2 in every classroom you're likely to see.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of kids in one school.
Yes. And, just to add on to that for the parents listening today, or for educators or even therapists that work within schools, the food allergies are considered a part of the ADA, so those children can have a 504 plan if their parents want them to, which would ensure that every teacher that comes into contact with them is aware of their food allergy, because sometimes those allergens I listed can be in a product they're using in a science experiment.
Wow.
It could be in anything. Sesame actually is in a leather seat cleaner for your car. So just examples of where you have to just be aware. And as you can see, that it can cause some anxiety, and you might feel like you don't know everything, but it's just a learning process.
So how can food allergies show up? Something that most parents would think is, okay, your child's not feeling well. Maybe they are, maybe they're having some kind of rash. Maybe they're not keeping their food down. But are there any other ways that, besides, when we think of the physical and what can be seen, that maybe someone could indicate that your child is dealing with this?
Those are all really good examples, like you said. If stomach hurting, a rash, swelling, and a rash anywhere on their body too. It could be around their stomach. It could just be around their mouth. Vomiting. Those are the major ones. And when you see both of those together, the recommendation per the Food Allergy Research and Education is if you see 2 happening at once, you should give epinephrine. But you should talk to your doctor, because every doctor should have an allergy action plan where they would tell you, because every kid's symptoms might look a little different. So you need to be aware of what your allergy action plan is. So just make sure you have that formulated with your allergist. And I recommend seeing an allergist too. Your primary care physician should direct you to an allergist.
And so those would be like the first steps for parents who are dealing with this.
Yes. I think a lot of insurance, unfortunately, just dictates that you go to your pediatrician or your primary care physician, and then they would give you a referral to an allergist. But an allergist is truly the person that knows what you're supposed to do, what that all looks like. They've studied it intensively. And there's a lot of new research coming out, so hopefully they're aware of it and can tell you what your options are in managing food allergies.
For parents who are also wanting to ensure that they're kind of looking at all the ways that this can manifest, has there been any research or is there any information on how allergies can affect other areas of a child's life besides in that immediate moment? So I'm thinking academics, sports.
Yes. That's a very good point to bring up, because if you've even had a minor allergic reaction, and this is part of our emergency action plan, but I think it's pretty prominent across the board, you're not supposed to be involved in sports or running. You're really supposed to just relax that child or that person for the next 24 hours minimum, depending upon the severity of the reaction, because you can go into a secondary reaction within an 8 to 12 hour window from having your first reaction, for example. So it can impact sports. Also, for people out there that have children, a lot of times soccer games, parents sign up for a snack list. At all of our soccer things, we've made it like, let's just bring fruit. But even then, some kids are allergic to fruit. So it's really nice to be aware of if just the blanket statement, are there any food allergies?
What are some of the myths or misperceptions that you think there are around allergies?
There are a lot of myths. A lot of people just think in general food allergies aren't serious. So what I've heard, you asked earlier about my personal experience, sitting in my son's preschool orientation, my child only eats peanut butter. So I'm still going to send them to school with peanut butter. And you would be surprised how often that happens, because people don't believe that food allergies are serious. And they are. Statistically, though, to decrease anxiety that I've hopefully not increased in people is you are more likely to pass away from, let's say, a car accident than you are from anaphylaxis. However, at the same time, someone goes to the emergency room every 2 minutes for a food allergy. So it does cause some potential life-threatening issues. It's just luckily we have found that epinephrine can save someone's life. And then there's other medical drugs that they're using in the hospital after you even get epinephrine. But it's really difficult. People feel like food allergies aren't serious. I think that's the biggest myth, because they are. Along with that myth is eating a little bit won't hurt. Well, for my son, when I had to administer the epinephrine in Hawaii, it was cross-contamination. So it was in a factory that has peanuts. It was not peanut was in that bar. And that is why he went into anaphylaxis. So a microscopic amount makes a big difference. Another one is, I had said it earlier, peanut is the most common food allergy. It is not. Milk and eggs are actually the more common food allergy. And unfortunately, a lot of people are finding that they're allergic to milk. I know there's a lot of discussion about milk intolerance. The difference, which I can add in a little more information while I'm talking about myths, is to have a food allergy, you would get tested by your allergist through blood or skin. If you test for milk and your IgE in your blood is a certain level and your skin prick test is a certain millimeters, then that would indicate that it is a food allergy and not a milk intolerance. I know that's kind of tricky and that's a lot of information right there, but that's how you would know the difference, because some people have a milk intolerance versus a milk allergy. But I brought that up too because milk is the most common and not peanut.
So it's almost like a sensitivity versus an allergy.
Yes, there's lots of things, for all of you social media people, it comes up in my feed all the time. Go get your sensitivity tested and all of that. That's totally different than food allergies. Another myth, a pretty important one that I had tested on earlier today, is all allergy-inducing ingredients are listed on food labels. Unfortunately, it is not required by the FDA for them to write if there's the potential for cross-contamination. So again, if something is on the same line of the factory or in the factory, there's always the possibility that that can be exposed to one of the allergens or something you're allergic to. So unless you directly contact the company, you don't know if that allergen is actually in the food. So you can see where anxiety comes from.
And I've seen that there are some places that do that, because I know I've seen that blurb where this was made in a place that also processes, and then they list things. But
yes,
I didn't realize that that's not like standard.
Required. Yeah. No, it's great when they do it, because then you know. But then that comes to the anxiety part of inclusion versus exclusion for kids, when it's impacting their lives at school and everywhere else. Plus, when you see your allergen listed on every food that you're looking at, that can produce anxiety too.
Yeah. So let's shift gears and let's focus on, I guess, the anxiety that impact these food allergies can have on parents, on siblings. In general, people all can relate to being anxious. How can a person, I guess, discern when anxiety is no longer just regular anxiety in the sense of it's not something that is concerning, where it's beginning to become problematic?
That's a great question, because I think for any one parent or a person that is in the beginning processes of managing a food allergy for themselves or their loved one, I think trying to find, whether it's an online support group or if you feel like you need to go to an individual therapist because that's more your style, I think it's a pretty important part of your process in managing food allergies, because you start to think you can't let your kids eat anything really. And then you think about all of your limits and you get into this negative frame of mind because you're worried about everything that your kid consumes. You go to the park and you're worried that they're going to touch something that some other kid that touched peanuts that day. It can be a lot. So I think it looks different for everybody, which is why I mentioned going on to a support group or talking to a therapist, or you and your spouse really sitting down and having a long conversation about what you want your life to look like while you're managing food allergies. So being a little bit proactive in that, rather than just kind of saying, okay, we can't do this, and really figuring out, like I said, what you want your life to look like. For instance, we still go to the park. I wipe his hands down. I have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I've talked to them about putting their hands in their mouth. Now, when he was younger, I couldn't stop him from putting his hand in his mouth. And we don't want our kids to put their hands in their mouth anyways, right?
Right.
We've had this discussion with the boys and with their older sister, who is a big help. Whenever we have the nanny here or babysitter while I'm working, she's very great about knowing what they can or cannot eat or what to avoid. In general, we try to keep most of their allergens out of our house, but at the same time, we have some things that are above out of reach because that was our choice. I know other families prefer to have nothing in the house that their children are allergic to. Basically, what I'm saying is to prepare yourself and figure out what you want your life to look like. And then from there, start making action plans, because it is very, very overwhelming. And then with the children, unfortunately, in my practice, I've seen a couple kids, mostly from the ages of 8 to 15, that manage them and their parents are managing their food allergies. And it has produced quite a bit of anxiety, to the point of where they don't want to go out with friends. They don't want to do a lot of things because they're scared. And most of those children have been in the situation where they've needed epinephrine. From my understanding, based on what they've told me, my child's too young to tell me what it feels like. It's uncomfortable. Prior to that, it's scary. So one of the things that I've done with my little guys is we talk about how certain foods are going to make you very itchy, which is something they can relate to. They remember that. Certain foods are going to make you feel unwell, so it's really important that you don't eat them. And I've shown them what those foods look like so that they're educated and aware. And we talk about it. And for the most part, I hope I'm preparing them to not have anxiety around their food allergies. I don't tell them, you're going to die if you eat this. And the sad thing is, we both kind of chuckle at that. Some parents do that. And that's where I'm seeing some of these kids that those parents are putting their anxieties on their child, and that's why earlier I had said you are more likely to die in a car accident than you are from food allergies. It's difficult because it's scary. You eat food all the time, and it's supposed to be a very, very safe thing. But for some people, it's not. So preparation is one of the biggest keys in reducing anxiety.
So again, preparation, support, lots of information so that you can structure your life accordingly. And I like also just what you mentioned about parental anxiety, because the research shows, there's a ton of this out there that if the parents are anxious, the kids are going to be anxious. So the best way to really prevent anxiety in your children is to take care of your own anxiety.
Yeah, and I wrote about that. I have a food anxiety blog attached to my website. And then also Stanford, who really has been the leader in looking more at creating less of a sensitivity to allergens. They're very cautious in not calling it a cure because there is no cure for allergies. But there's quite a few places that provide oral immunotherapy. We don't do that here in Nevada, but quite a few other states do. And they write a lot about parents' anxiety as well. And even not just the parents, the sibling of children with a food allergy, or even the children of a parent with a food allergy. How we act around our kids will show them how to cope. And I think that's the next step. When you talk about preparation and support, the next step is coping and reframing the way that you think. Food allergies, nobody likes them, but I can't look at it as such a negative thing. I have to look at it as some cards that we've been dealt, and we're going to do the best we can with them and just try to keep everybody safe.
So, Joann, if we have a parent who's listening right now and she or he is resonating with what we're talking about, what would be your words of support or words of wisdom for them as they begin to really explore or tackle this issue?
This is so cliche, but kind of taking it one day at a time and looking at it and saying, first off, we're going to look at our home and we're going to figure out what we need to get rid of food-wise, what we're willing to keep, what they can and cannot eat, and starting from your house. Also, depending upon the age of your children, I gave the example of mine. So to the parents out there with the little ones, just talking to them about the discomfort of them eating their food allergen and saying, we don't want to feel that way. And you don't have to relate putting their hands in their mouth just to their food allergen. You can relate it to germs in general. Being too hyper focused on it will manifest into them overthinking it as well, right? So that's what I would recommend in that situation. And then with your older kids, you want to talk to them about that it is serious and have them talk to their friends too, and then go grocery shopping together and read labels together and do things as a family together. And I think that that's helpful in feeling like you have that immediate support in your house too, and that the kids feel supported.
And what are your favorite resources on this? Either books or websites or blogs or support groups?
So the Food Allergy Research and Education nonprofit, it's foodallergy.org, is the best. I have their epinephrine action plan in my house in addition to the one that I've come up with our allergist. It also gives you sheets where you can put your child's name. I have 2 separate sheets, one for each of my kids and their allergens, and I have it out. Even though in our house, like I said, we pretty much don't have their allergens, but unfortunately my boys are allergic to different things. That causes a little bit of an issue. So I have that listed. Like I said, though, I have things sorted out, and that gives me peace of mind. I am on a couple Facebook groups. There are some that might suit your style more than others. There's a No Nuts Mom Facebook group, and that is national. Most people on there aren't from Nevada, actually. There is one called Food Allergy Treatment Talk. That is pretty serious on the treatment ideas. they don't like anecdotal information. So if you want to go there to share what happened to you that day, you can't do that.
Okay.
If you want to go there to look up actual articles that they expect you to cite your sources like you're in college again, that's a good one. There's an OIT treatment talk. There's quite a few. I think it's exploring what suits your personality too, because sometimes I go on there and I go, whoa, these people are definitely on a different playing field than me as far as what they want their lives to look like. Unfortunately, I wish I could say there were even more resources out there. I think everybody's working on it. Stanford, a couple other hospitals are looking at how do we help the whole person. I was a part of a study at Stanford with my boys, and I had to fill out very long questionnaires, and at least a third of them were psychologically related to see how much anxiety we had as parents and how much we believed our children had too. So that was great. I do recommend what they're doing over there.
And Joann, if there are listeners who are interested in working with you or learning more about the work that you're doing, what's the best way that they can find you or reach you?
My website is a great way. It's lasvegas-therapy.com, LASVEGAS-THERAPY.com. That's attached to my blog as well. And I have an area dedicated to food allergies. I also have an area dedicated to just anxiety in general. So I think that there's some good areas to read in there. And I'm always open. If anyone wants to contact me through that and get through to me through email, I'm very open with emailing, and I'd be happy to provide information about food allergies or additional resources. On my blog too, I think on one of them there's a worksheet that's attached on how, like, preparation style and how to kind of reframe your thought process related to food allergies.
And we'll make sure to put your website link in the show notes so that listeners can find you. And Joann, thank you again so much for taking the time today to share with us about your experience and your expertise and adding to the body of knowledge on this topic, which it does need more information and needs more resources.
It does. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope that if you don't have food allergies or you're not managing them, at least you can talk to your kids about being aware of friends around you that may have a food allergy and still trying to figure out ways to include them in classroom activities, soccer, whatever it might be.
Thanks again, Joann. I'm looking forward to sharing our conversation with the world.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the Women in Depth podcast. I hope it brings you a deeper understanding of yourself and others, and that you found some insights that illuminated and inspired. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting Women in Depth with a one-time or recurring donation. Any amount is appreciated and helps us continue to provide free, quality content for the world. If donating resonates with you, you can find the donation link on today's show notes. You can also follow Women in Depth on Facebook and YouTube, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe on iTunes. Again, thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.